Japan might have to dump radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean as it runs out of storage.
And to better understand the possible impact, we're joined by Professor Neil Hyatt from the University of Sheffield, an expert in radioactive waste management. Professor Hyatt, first question is, the Japanese Environment Minister, he appears to be under the impression that dumping the waste in the ocean will actually dilute it. How true is this?
So that's a very accurate description of what's envisaged. So since the Fukushima accident in March 2011, the damaged reactor cores have been cooled by water to maintain them in a safe condition. And as the water passes through the damaged cores, it picks up radioactivity, most of which is removed by a kind of chemical sponge. And what's left in the water is a radioisotope called tritium, which is a form of heavy hydrogen. So it has the chemistry of normal hydrogen, so it will substitute in water molecules. And by discharging in a controlled way the stored water to the ocean, those radioactive water molecules get diluted in the volume of the ocean. So it's reduced to a level where it can cause no significant threat to human or animal life.
So you're saying that if they do this right in the right sort of amounts, that this would actually have no impact on the environment?
It will have no measurable impact on the environment or on the nearby communities, or indeed the sea life, if it's done in a controlled way over a long period of time. And in fact, one of the things that's very challenging about tritium, this radioisotope, is it has the chemistry of of hydrogen, as I've said. So if we have tritium substituting in water molecules, it's very difficult to concentrate and treat. And so the standard practice in the nuclear industry and facilities all over the world where you have tritium-containing wastes is to dilute them very slowly in large bodies of water like the ocean. And that minimizes the risk and hazard to the environment as well as to living organisms.
But Professor Hyatt, even the locals themselves, the local fishermen and even neighboring South Korea, they're very unhappy about what is happening, although you say even if it's discharged in small amounts, it will have no impact. But we're talking about 1 million tons of contaminated water that has been collected, and they're going to run out of storage space in, what, 3 years' time?
Well, that's the correct situation, and I can very much understand the concerns of both people in Japan and in Korea, because it sounds like we're seeking to dump radioactive waste. But I come back to what I said. That's not the case. It will be done in a very controlled way, and it will be closely monitored, including, for example, the local foodstuffs. So we would expect the fish and the seafood that's caught in the region of Fukushima to be continued to be monitored for the uptake of tritium from this process. So providing that's done and the release of this contaminated water is done to a very carefully controlled program that's monitored by the Japanese government and by international inspectors, then there's no reason to think that there will be significant risk to the environment or to human or animal health. And it's worth thinking about the alternative to that, which is that the water continues to be stored on site. We know that space is running out. It's contained in tanks that were built, some of them very quickly after the Fukushima incident in March 2011, with a limited lifespan. And if there's an earthquake in the region, it's quite possible that the containment of those tanks would be lost, and that would then pose an accident which would be very difficult and challenging to clean up. So in terms of the overall hazard and risk, it's much better that we seek to release this water containing tritium into the local oceans in a control program over several years.
Professor, I just want to pick up on something I keep hearing. It's controlled manner. It's a release of the water in a controlled manner. But what happens if it's not controlled? Like you say, if there's another earthquake and it becomes uncontrolled, does that mean then the dumping of the radioactive then becomes dangerous?
So the issue with, for example, another earthquake is that if you lost the containment in several tanks, then the water would flood out in an uncontrolled way, and it would clearly spread out in the local environment. and it would deposit its contamination in the topsoil, and then that would have to be, scooped up and then treated to remove the contamination. So in that way, it wouldn't be diluted in the same way as it would in the local ocean. So although 1 million tons of processed water contaminated with tritium sounds a lot, it's very small in comparison to the volume of water in the world's oceans. And that's why this principle of dilution works in our favor, so that we can reduce the contamination to infinitesimally small levels that don't pose a threat to the environment or living organisms.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Hyatt, for speaking and helping us understand the issue. Speaking there, Professor Neil Hyatt from the University of Sheffield.